Amanda Confer, and like I said, I've been here for several years now. I've come several times, and it's just been really great to see this program evolve and continue to get better. And it's just always great to be here. It's just such a warm community. I always love my Friday gather experiences with you guys. So thank you for having me. So today, in an official capacity, I'm here with an organization called Associates for Educational Success. It's a consulting organization that works all over the country. This is one of the many books the co-founders and CEO have written, but as many of you know, I also have other hats that I wear. So my full-time job right now is the Director of Mathematics for a network of charter schools in Los Angeles. So I oversee all of our schools, pre-K through 12. I also just accepted a position at UCLA as an adjunct instructor, so I do some work with them. And before that, I actually worked at Stanford with Dr. Jill Bowler, who you have, I think, met. She's been here a few times and definitely have heard about in this community. I'm actually considering just getting a degree from Berkeley to really round out the sports rivalry, Yeah, really just make everyone upset a little bit. So, so before that, I worked in sports. So I was a teacher. I taught first grade and second grade, and 6th, 7th, 8th, and algebra. Very quickly I got to a lot of different things. And also in schools, I worked as an instructional coach. So that meant that I just worked with teachers to make their practice even better. So that's my background. Like I said, I live in Los Angeles right now. I live with my fiance and my crazy Chihuahua dog. I'm getting married in April. So that's what sorry to interrupt. Sorry guys. Yep, I'm gonna be stuck over here. Actually, can I move this so I can see as well? Yeah, absolutely. Is this okay, or you're going to have to move if I wander?
I just need to be able to hear you. I'm sorry.
Got it. No problem at all. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. So can someone read that quote for me out loud just to kick us off? Can I hand this to you?
Our task is to help children climb their own mountains as high as possible. No one can do more.
Thank you for that. I like to start with quotes like that. I know you guys all have a lot on your minds. You're probably going to run out and do errands. You just saw your students in here. So it's a nice way to ground us. This is by the founder of the Reggio Emilia program. And I really like this quote. I think it says a lot about what happens at PBS. We're really trying to get our kids to climb the highest of mountains. And look at that little child that I get to work with. How cute is she? So some goals for today. We're going to be talking about number sense and what that is. We're also going to talk about what it looks like when a child actually has number sense and why that's so important. And we're also going to talk about the math program at PBS and some of the ways that the teachers are supporting number sense and enrichment in particular for your students. But at the end of the day, this is your time. I have a PowerPoint presentation as kind of some food for thought for us. But if you have questions, please feel free to raise your hand. If you have a question about your specific child, I do have some time at the end just slated for that if you want to talk to me individually. But really, this is meant to give you guys some things to think about and think about what's on your mind. All right, so feel free to raise your hand. We can have a conversation. It's a nice small group here today. So in terms of number sense, I want you to think about somebody who you know who has number sense. Whatever your definition of that is right now. What's something that they say or they do that tells you they have number sense? So just think about that for a moment. Someone who you know has number sense, what do they say or do? Yeah, go ahead.
They count cards.
They count cards. So we're talking a little gambling here. All right. Tell me more. How does that happen?
Well, this is somebody that I was just talking to, and he said that when he was younger, he can't do it so well anymore. But when he was in college, he could go into a casino and with a 6-deck blackjack hand, he could keep track of cards and win.
Wow. So
he's an actuary.
Oh, he's an actuary now. But he used to go into casinos and count cards. I'm rephrasing for our camera here. So he would count cards and he could keep track. He could just remember all of those cards. Great. Okay. What else? Yeah.
The younger kids lining up things based on size or color.
Oh.
Really,
yeah, with little kids lining up things based on size or color. That's part of number sense. Yeah. What else? Have you ever been out to eat with somebody who's going to figure out the tip for you? How would you know if that person has some number sense or not? Are they the ones getting out their phone and clicking away? talk to somebody next to you for a second. If you're going out to eat and somebody's figuring out the tip for you, how are you knowing if this person might have number sense or maybe not so much? No wrong answers. Just talk to somebody next to you. All right, so do you get a chance to talk to somebody? What does number sense look like in your day-to-day life if you're trying to figure out a tip or something? Do you want to share with us?
Okay, so when we go out to eat, we typically just move the decimal point of whatever our total is and double that if you'd like 20%, or halve that and then add it to do 15. That's pretty basic. I mean, no calculator required.
Yeah, so you can do that in your head, and you have a general idea that you can move that decimal point and what that means. It's going to get you 10%, right? And then you take that number and you can either double it to get 20% or half it and add it to get your 15%. Yeah. So in our lives, we have some of these strategies, right, to get us through the math that we encounter every day. So when we think about number sense, the first thing that we think about for students is concepts. Okay, so the concepts that we think about, this is the understanding and the comprehension, like if they understand what's happening mathematically. So with addition, for example, you think about how numbers go together and are taken apart, so you can apply that understanding to addition. The other thing that's really important with number sense are skills. Now, skills are different. Skills are more about the fluency and the memorizing that happens. So if you're doing addition, a really useful skill for a young child is skip counting, right? If they can really fluently, relatively quickly say 5, 10, 15, 20, that's going to help them be able to add things in a pretty efficient way. Does that make sense? So when we think about number sense, it's not just the concepts. Right? It's not just living in this world of, yes, I understand the big ideas of numbers, but there's also this other piece. The students do need to have some fluency, some general understanding about what the skills are they need to apply. And the reason why we need both of these is that so students can solve problems. Because at the end of the day, we have computers in our daily life. If our kids live only over here in the skills, they're not going to be any better than the computers or the calculator you carry around in your pocket. Right, that I don't know if when you went to school, but I was always told you're never going to want to carry a calculator with you everywhere, so you need to know how to do this on your own. Well, guess what? I carry it around with me all the time now. So that's what we think about, is how these concepts and these skills can go together so our students can really solve problems and solve more and more complex problems, both as they go through school, but also later on in life and when they choose a career. And I want to compare this to literacy, to reading for a moment. You all know when your child is learning to read, they need to have some fluency, right? There's some things they need to memorize, right? B says buh, right? That's an important thing for them to know. And they need to be fluent with it. If they're choppily reading, that gets in the way, right? We want them to be able to read with fluidity, with some fluency. The other thing about reading is that we want them to read to understand. We would never say to a child, we just want you to read to read. It doesn't matter what it means, you don't need to read to learn. You just need to learn to read and don't even think about what's happening. We would never say that to our students about reading. We know that comprehension is a really important part about reading. Sometimes we forget that it's just as important in math. It's really important for them to understand both these pieces, to have that fluency piece, but also the comprehension. So when we think about these goals for number sense, we want our students to be able to solve problems with accuracy, with flexibility, and with efficiency. So all of these ideas, that Venn diagram and the way we want our students to solve problems, these all go into number sense. They're all goals, not one more important than the other, but these are all equal goals that we have for our students. So accuracy being getting the right answer. Like I said during Gather, it's not just about accuracy, but it is. And I think all the teachers here would say that. Yeah, at the end of the day, we do want our students to get the right answer. There are other things that are important too, though. And one of those things that's important is flexibility. So that means that students need to have more than one way to solve a problem. So yesterday I was talking to Carrie and we used this example of 300 minus 299. If you have a child who only knows the algorithm for subtraction, think about that. 300 minus 299. And they stack those numbers on top of each other. And they're going to use that algorithm. And they have no flexibility. They don't have another strategy to solve that problem. We're actually putting their accuracy at risk. There's a big chance that they're going to make a mistake with that. The last goal that we have is efficiency. We want them to be relatively efficient or quick, right? It's not, again, it's not the most important thing. It's not the only important thing. But yeah, we do have this goal. We don't want our students struggling and struggling when they're in 5th grade to figure out what 5 times 5 is. We really do want them to start to have some fluidity with it. But again, think about 300 minus 299. If we only teach them the algorithm, if that's the only strategy we offer them, how efficient is that? Can you solve it in a quicker way than the algorithm? Yeah, you have some number sense. You know that 300 minus 299, you can solve that very quickly. But if we only offer our students that one algorithm, that one way to solve it, like I said, there's a good chance they're going to make a mistake, so their accuracy is at risk, and it's not the quickest way to do it. So I just talked to you about some big ideas, right? Some big ideas in number sense, these concepts and skills and problem solving. So I want you guys to have a chance to experience it for yourself and to make it a little more concrete, what it actually looks like, in your child's classroom. So we're going to play a math game, and this is the game we're going to do. Don't worry, I saw some fear come up. All right, it's all right. We're doing numbers 1 through 6. All right, it's fun. You'll be able to talk to some other parents and hopefully have some fun with what we're doing. So this math task is something that your students do. I believe it's a fourth grade game. It's called Roll a Fact, and it looks like this. It's based on bowling. So here are the directions, and they're written down here. So if you don't understand it fully, you can look at here again. You're going to roll the dice. You're going to have 3 dice, and you're going to roll it. And you're going to take those numbers, and with team 1, you can work together or work in a competitive way. But if you want to work together, you'll just look at this part right here, and you'll put those 3 numbers up at the top. And then you're going to use all the operations, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction, to try to make these numbers here. Okay? So if you roll the dice 3 times and you get a 3, a 4, and a 4, right? So if you add those all up, if you want to use addition all the way across, what number would you get? A 3, a 4, and a 4. 11, right? So then in that case, it wouldn't work, right? So what could you do instead? If you have a 3, a 4, and a 4, what operations could you use to get to one of these numbers? Division. So maybe 4 divided by 4 plus 3. That would get you 4, and you can cross that off. So what you do is you use that same rule, and you try to cross off as many as you can, and you capture your thinking down here. And if you can find all these numbers with that first roll, then you got a strike, right? If you can't find all those numbers, you're going to roll again and put your second roll down here. And again, do that same process to try to get the other numbers, in which case you get a spare, right? Because you had to roll twice. Got it? Okay, so we're going to use this as an example. I want you to really try it on and see what it might look like to be in the student's shoes and develop some of that number sense. And then afterwards, we're going to unpack it. We're going to see, when did we use flexibility? Where were we using accuracy? All right? So I'm going to be walking around if you have some questions, but we're going to be sitting at these back tables. We're just going to do this for a short amount of time because it's more about the ideas that we're getting from it, not about completing it all the way. So go ahead and find a partner and head back to these tables. All right. Thank you guys so much for doing that. I saw a lot of great thinking happening, and there's some extra blank copies. A couple of you asked for that, so you can take it home. We've got some of those for you to walk out with. So I planned to bring this conversation back to number sense, but I heard so many really rich conversations about math. So I'm just curious, just in a very open way, what kind of mathematical conversations did you find yourself having with your group? What kind of conversations did you find yourself having with your group? What the optimal numbers would be. So what numbers do you actually want to roll versus not roll? Did you find some numbers that were really unhelpful? What did your group find?
We had 3, 6. All the dice system.
3, 6.
It was hard to get.
Yeah, they had 3 6s. I'm shoot, there's only a couple ways to get through this. Yeah. What other conversations did you find yourself having? Odd versus even. Say more about that.
How you could, how limiting or how option creating by having odd versus even.
how limiting or option creating was having even numbers versus odd numbers. Wow, that's a big mathematical rabbit hole you could go down there, huh? Yeah, with a simple game, right? We're really just adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, but look at all those conversations that you're having. What about this group? I heard you say something, Elizabeth. What were you guys talking about?
We were really sticking with our first roll because we had only 3 other pins to knock down, and we felt, yeah, we were really determined to make that work.
They were super determined to make that work. So they had their first roll and only found there was just 3 more pins that they wanted to knock down after just that first roll, and they were sitting with it, man. They were really going for it. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's a really interesting problem because, again, like on the surface it seems very easy, right? We're just doing these basic operations, but when you get down into it, there's a lot that students can be thinking about. So I want to bring this back to our conversation about number sense. In what ways did you use number sense during this task? So that's why I gave you that sheet with the Venn diagram on it. Go ahead and go back to that sheet. In what ways did you see some of these ideas, or were you using some of these ideas? So I want you to take a minute to actually think about this. So turn to somebody near you and have that conversation. In what ways did you use some of these ideas or principles while you were playing that game? Who would like to share? Would you mind sharing one of your ideas? You talked about so many great things.
I did with the number sense, basically, as you said, but concept. So we're just trying to combine all the multiplication, subtraction, addition, and using the PEMDAS, like the concept. Remember, I back from my school days. Yeah. So we came up with different options because we had the top one with 3 6s. So we're trying to see which concept will work to rule out the numbers.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're thinking about the concept, what concepts were involved, and then some skills. You had some skills about PEMDAS. You had some order of operations skills that you brought to the table. Yeah, you absolutely used those too. Yeah, that's great. What else? Where else did you use some of these ideas in that math task?
And you're just flexible too, being flexible and also efficient.
Flexibility. How are you being flexible?
Flexible in the do not like to be just on, okay, it has to be like an addition, so you're trying to combine addition and addition in one of the big term numbers so we can strike out all the numbers.
Yeah, see, think about that flexibility you used. How many times did you think about addition, and then where did subtraction fit in, and then multiplication, and then multiplication twice, and then some division? There was a lot of flexibility that you had to apply. What about efficiency? Did efficiency come up for you at all?
By the time you keep going, eventually, like you're like, okay, let's just start dividing this one number by all. And then at least in my head, we started breaking it up. Yeah,
so by the time you kept going, you figured out like there are certain numbers that you wanted to, that came quickly to you. If you had 2 5s, maybe you wanted to divide those to find your 1. 5 divided by 5 maybe is 1, that kind of thing. Yeah, maybe you got some efficiency as you went. And also, what would have happened if you spent all your time trying to add up those numbers for that first problem, right? You had a lot to do, right? And if you were stuck on that first one, you probably wouldn't ever have been able to figure out the next one. And then, did accuracy come up? Yeah, you were just trying to find the answer at the end of the day. So that was part of the problems we were doing too. So thank you guys for doing that. Hopefully that makes it a little more concrete, that you can have this one math problem and you're actually doing a lot. The students are really thinking deeply and developing some really deep skills, while at the same time, they're working on their facts, right? 7 times 7, or not 7, 6 times 6 probably came up, right? They had to like practice that fact, even though they were still developing their number sense at the same time. So I want to make this, again, a little bit more concrete. I know you've heard from a lot of different speakers over the last few years now, I guess, about big ideas in mathematics, so I want to make this a little more concrete. And before I do, Carrie has a question.
I know, and I just thought of it.
Yeah.
You said that. You need to know your facts in order to be able to be efficient in how you write through and solve this. And we all need PEMDAS for our operations. So I guess my question was, at what stage do you do kind of like the pre-assessment versus post-assessment? Do you do a pre-assessment to see how they would struggle and, their brain could grow and challenge themselves in the operations that they would use, and then once they know their math facts, how much more efficiently, like we all did, they would be able to flow through. I mean, at one point Sarah said, I guess you could literally go through and write down every single type of combination.
Mm-hmm. So your question, right? So your question is about, you know,
Knowing the math facts.
how the math facts support. Yeah, would you want, like, this task would look very different for a group of maybe third graders who are just starting to toy around with the ideas of multiplication and division versus some, like, later on when you have that more fluidity, right? So in terms of the teaching aspect, that would be a teacher decision, right? If you want to put this in front of students to maybe convince them, hey, efficiency really does matter. Sometimes you really do have to get through a lot of problems, even if they're not very efficient yet. Or it might be a tool to get them to be more efficient. It really is kind of just practice, right? It's a way to get students to be more efficient with their multiplication and division facts. And then you mentioned a post-assessment. Yeah, you could do this at the end of some teaching to see how efficient are they? Are they actually accurate? You can go through and read all those number sentences and be like, oh, they just really wanted to find 3. They didn't actually find 3, they just really wanted to find 3. So that's a good point, because it does, right? That efficiency does impact how well you're able to do that task. It's just a teacher decision on when you'd want to give this, and yeah, you could do it multiple times.
And then it's also a teacher decision on how far you want to go into the math facts, right? The knowledge and memorization and fluidity of those math facts before you tackle something that includes a lot more conduct.
Yep, and we could talk all day about that decision, right? I have an expert 4th grade teacher right over here who could tell you about that. And I think what you're talking about starts to kind of get into what we're doing next, which is about kind of that pathway. There are things called learning pathways, and your teachers are really good at understanding these learning pathways. And that means, what are the foundational ideas that need to build and build so that a student has a really strong understanding of, for example, their addition number facts. So not that they've just memorized them, not that they're just on that skills side of the Venn diagram, but they're also on the concept side. So we're going to use addition. We're going to use like kinder 1st grade addition as an example of this, and I'm going to walk you through what this might look like. But know that these learning pathways and these knowledge packages exist for fractions and multiplication and division, even if you do have an older child. So I'm giving you an example of one learning pathway, and that's about how students actually get to addition when they're doing single-digit addition. So there's all these things that kindergarteners and our students in the Early Learning Center are toying around with when it comes to counting. And there are really, really big ideas when it comes to comparing. And there are a ton of ideas when it comes to part-whole relationships. I talked about this last time I was here, how you can take numbers and take them apart and put them back together, and there's all sorts of different questions you can ask about that. And all those things build to get us to strategies for addition. And meanwhile, we're anchoring to 5 and 10 in the process. So we're not going to talk about all of these pieces, even though, man, I really love talking about counting. It is so complex what our kids are doing, what's happening in their brains when they're learning how to count. But we're going to think about these strategies for addition. So the thing about addition is that there are actually more sophisticated ways to do addition and less sophisticated ways to do addition. So again, when we think about number sense, accuracy is a big piece of it. We want our students to be accurate. And yet, they can be accurate in less sophisticated ways and in more sophisticated ways. So when we think about particularly a 1st grader and how they're learning to add, these are the different things that our teachers are thinking about. Are the students getting the right answer by counting all of the objects from 1? Right, so that's if you have 5 and 5 and they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's great, they got the right answer. We're excited about that. And as a teacher, we know there's more work for them to do. There's more learning and more connections that they need to make about addition. Level 2 strategies are counting on. Counting on means if you have, again, that 5 and 5, you say you know there's 5 over here. We say 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's a more sophisticated understanding of what addition is. You can also count by groups, 5, 10. Again, a more sophisticated way to think about what addition is. The most complex way to think about addition, and what's really important for students to understand, our very young students, in order to set them up on a good path for the higher mathematics they're going to do, are these derived facts. Using what they know about doubles and using what they know about tens to solve different problems. So we're going to watch a couple videos, and I want you to think about these and tell me which, you're going to see some kids counting or adding, right? And you're going to tell me which level that they're on, so you can kind of see this in action and see exactly what I mean. And they're more fun to watch than me counting with my fingers anyway. All right, so think about it. Which strategy is this student using?
Amanda had 9 books on her top shelf. She had 6 on her bottom shelf. How many books does she have in all?
So what did you do, Kimberly?
I put 9 on top and then 6 on the bottom. Then I knew that 5 plus 5 is 10. And then there was 4 blue ones. And then there was 1 blue at the bottom. So then I added these all together, all the blue ones together. And that equals 5. Then I said 5, 10, 15.
So you just saw a student do some addition. Do you have a guess about what strategy the student used? You're putting on your teacher hat right now. This is what teachers do all day long. Like, what just happened in that child's brain? Do you have a guess? Number 2, the count by groups. Did you guys see that? Did you see her counting by groups? What did she say at the end? 5, 10, 15. She took that, a 4 and a 1, and turned it into a 5. I saw that too. Did you hear her at the beginning? She's like, I know 5 and 5 makes 10. Did you hear that part at the very beginning? She went back and counted them separately, but she's thinking about this one, this making tens part. So I think about her, she's like, oh, she's not quite a 2, she's not quite a 1, she's somewhere in the middle there. It's kind of cool, right? There's like a lot of different things. Our kids don't almost ever fit neatly into these little categories that we make for them. So yeah, that's where she was. That's where Kimberly was. Also, the problem that you heard, it's about Amanda and her bookshelf. Did you notice that? So AES decided to use me in these videos. I really appreciate that about them. So we're gonna watch another video. See if you can tell what this student is doing, where their thinking is.
Amanda has 9 books on the top shelf and 6 on the bottom. How many altogether? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
What strategy was that? Level 1, counting by ones. Yep, she was counting by ones. And so she was accurate, wasn't she? She got the right answer, which is great. We're really happy about that. But we also know this child has some learning and growing to do, right? And the thing about counting by ones is she did it pretty slowly. You can get students who get very quick at counting by ones. So what happens is it looks like they might be efficient. You might have a kindergartner or a first grader who it looks like they're really efficient because they got really good at counting by ones. But at the end of the day, the sophistication of their thinking still needs to do some work. So I know sometimes even second or third graders, they'll be writing tally marks in the corner of their paper to try to figure out the right answer so they can get efficient with it. But at the end of the day, there's deeper thinking that we want them to do. So last one. Let's see what this student is doing. What strategies is he using?
Amanda had 8 teddy bears on the top of her shelf. She keeps 9 teddy bears on the bottom of her shelf. How many teddy bears she had in all? Well, I know that 8 plus 8 is 16, and if you add them all, that's 17.
I love that little guy at the end. He's like, I'm going to fold my hands because I am such a good student, right? What level was he using? What was he doing? Doubles. That's what it means to use doubles, right? He has some skills. He has some skills around his doubles. He knows what 5 plus 5 is. He knows what 8 plus 8 is. He doesn't have to think about that anymore. And he can use what he knows about doubles, that skill he has, and apply it to these problems. So he took this 9s and 8s, they can be hard for our students, but he just took it apart. He's like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn this problem into one that I really know. 8 plus 8 and one more. That's easy for him. So the other piece that I wanted to talk about, actually I'm going to pause there. Were there any questions or thoughts about these different levels of strategies that we're trying to get our students to understand? Yeah.
So I'm curious, when you do assessments for kids in general, will we get information like here's what level your child is at and what, that type of information back? And then is there any sort of guideline that, if you're in kindergarten and you have achieved this strategy, you're on path for X or Y?
Yeah, that's a great question. Other questions about assessment and where the students are, if they're living at a level 1 or living at a level 3, and then what we want them to do by the end of each grade level. So that's a question I don't fully know the answer to, so I'd rather tell you I don't know right now than to give you some inaccurate information. But I'll make sure that Elizabeth and Leslie write that down, because I know they have a lot more information on that for you. Okay, great. Any other thoughts on that idea?
Each child between each levels, does that happen through them different teaching styles, or is that something that the kid just automatically starts generating? Because I think it's one of those things where we assume A to B already, and if we go back and put ourselves in the steps where we don't remember how to get to A to B.
Yeah, so the question is about how does a child get from level 1 to level 2 and level 2 to level 3? That's a really good question. And what your teachers do at PBS, it is all about the teaching style. It's about the approach. It's about creating spaces where the students are exposed to a lot of different strategies. And then these strategies are discussed. And so students start to take on one another's strategies. So you might have a student who's at a level 1 strategy, but they're in a group with students who are thinking about level 3. If I force that kid to start doing the level 3 strategy and I say, oh, just do like this, just do your doubles, it's fine, just memorize that. It's not as impactful as saying, this student who is at a level 3, who really understands it, I want you to explain it and see if this other student understands it. And so the way your teachers operate is they play these games a lot, particularly in K1 and 2. And so students are constantly thinking about, what was my strategy? What was so-and-so's strategy? Which one was more efficient this time? Which one's more efficient next time? Right? Because there are some times where counting by ones is just fine, right? If you're adding 2 and 3, it's not going to really hold you up that much, right? I know sometimes adults even do that, 3, 4, 5, counting on. So it is about the teaching style, and we could talk all day about that, but it is about offering this space and nudging. You're offering nudges to students because the teacher knows where they need to get, and you're going to kind of nudge them along so that they develop that understanding. So it's not an artificial, I'm doing a level 3 because I memorized it. It's I really understand how to use my 10s to solve these problems. Yeah. Go ahead, yeah.
Do you ever hear level 2, level 1, and level 3 2s? For 3s and 1s, probably has 2 years.
Yeah, great question. You guys have your teacher hats on today. That's awesome. So the question was, how do you pair students? Do you want to pair level 1s with 2s and 3s, or 3s with 1s feels like a big leap? That's a great question. These are the things that your teachers are thinking about constantly. What's the right way to kind of nudge these students to the next level? And you're mostly right. In most situations, it does make sense to heterogeneously group, right? So if you have all your high students together, then they're just kind of living with their level 3 strategies, but they might not be able, if they can explain it to a level 2 student, then that helps them understand their level 3 strategy even further. Yeah, but these are the exact same things your teachers are thinking about. Yeah, go ahead.
Do they always go from level 1, 2, 3, or is it sometimes for example, level 3 students learn something level 1 and they kind of oh, I get that, even though they didn't get necessarily level 2?
That's a great question. Yeah, is it always linear? They go level 1 to level 2 to level 3. No way. You know what? And even calling a student a level 3 student is inaccurate. A student might exhibit level 3 thinking one day. You might not see it again for 3 weeks, right? That's just how learning happens. It's not as a teacher, that would be so beautiful if I was oh, you fit in this category, and then we're going to grow, and we're going to grow. It's just not how it works, right? And you probably see that with your students. They go back and forth, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go for it. The next learning pathway that we're not going to talk about today. But yeah, there's always more. We didn't see the algorithm, right? Because we're talking about single digit addition, but then there's 2-digit addition, and then there's other pieces that go into that. Yeah, so there's definitely more beyond this. It keeps building on itself. Great question.
Talk a little bit more about kind of the old-fashioned way of just memorizing skills versus kind of a new method is to kind of expose to concepts first and get them to just think about the big, like how they would solve this without even knowing any of the skills, and then kind of going back and teaching the skills. And if you focus on just the root memorization, does that impact how they approach a larger problem later on?
Yes, and it's a big question. I'm trying to think about how to summarize like 40 years of research into a 2-minute question. So, yes, it does matter, right? Like what you do first and how you approach it. I think the simplest way to think about this is what teachers think about in constructivism learning, which is about the quality of understanding. And the way you have a really deep and quality understanding of an idea is based on how many connections it can make to other ideas that you already know. So your teachers try to create learning experiences for your students that build on things they already know to really make those connections. On the other end of the spectrum is a low-quality understanding of an idea, what you're naming rote memorization. So if I'm just memorizing my facts, it's an isolated idea. If I just memorize my addition facts, 1 + 1 is 2, 2 + 2 is 4, but I don't have a concept of that whole learning pathway I showed you earlier, it lives in isolation in your brain. It's just a single little idea over here. And there's no connections. It's not connecting to your part-whole relationships. It's not connecting to what you know about counting. It's not connecting to what you know about skip counting. And so that's what we call like a low-quality understanding of an idea. You might still be able to get the right answer, but you don't have the depth of understanding. So that's a little bit, that's kind of getting at your question. There's a lot of other pieces to what you're talking about, but yeah, the idea is to have more and more connections, because what we know is then that can build. You can build on ideas with multiple connections. If you have that rote memorization, it'll get you pretty far for a while. And when we're talking elementary school, it will get you pretty far. But when you get into middle school and you start thinking about how fractions compare to ratios and proportions, and then I'm the algebra teacher, right? I taught algebra, and oh boy, did we have to start over in algebra, because kids learn these isolated bits of ideas. And so I was struggling to teach algebra and to build these connections for kids that they hadn't made over time. So yeah, again, yet another thing we could talk about all day. Yeah, go for it.
So relative to that, when it comes to efficiency, it's pretty frustrating to see the 5th grader struggle to do like 6 times 6, kind of looking through it, 2 minutes to figure it out. It gets the right answer, but they keep having to figure it out from scratch every time, instead of just having this times table like memorized. At some point, it seems like memorizing the times table would be more efficient. You've got the concepts, but let's just plug in the answer.
Yeah, and that's the balance, right? Again, we want those skills, we want those concepts, and you're right. If the students have those concepts, there are ways, such as this game that you play, that give them efficient. It gives them a reason to be efficient, right? So they practice that, so they do start to memorize. So they're not memorizing, it's not rote memorization, just in isolation. It can be fluency, right? They're fluent, they're efficient with it, but they have that deep understanding with it. So yeah, that's true. At the end of the day, we do want our students to be able to solve problems with efficiency, but not at the expense of those concepts. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, and we're going to do one last question because I have a couple more things to show you, and then I can hang out for another couple minutes after 10 o'clock. Yeah, go for it.
Are you saying the kids are not going to learn how to type single track, or you say they're going to learn it through games like this and not actually, like just after they understand the concept, are they going to just do that memorization just so they have it? Or you're saying, no, that's actually no longer good?
So I wrote a whole article on this, and I'd love for you to read it sometime. So the thing is, if the students have the concept, we do want them to memorize in that it comes quickly and naturally to them, but with the concept, right? So it's almost like a trajectory. They're going to build on the concept, and they're going to have enough experiences where, like, yeah, I've seen 7 times 8 before, and if I forget it, I can use 7 times 7 to help me figure out 7 times 8. So that there's a way for it. So it's not just I'm memorizing the times table chart, but I have enough concepts that I can apply what I know conceptually to these skills. So in terms of how it looks exactly at PBS, I think you have some great 4th and 5th grade teachers who could tell you the specifics. But again, it's that skill piece, that ability to be able to be efficient with things so you can solve those problems. It is a goal. It's not the only goal, but it is a goal that we have for our students. Those concepts, that's what's a lot harder. And that's where I know the teachers spend a lot of time with. So did you capture that question? Awesome. All right, thank you guys for that. I know these are such rich and big ideas. I have a couple more things I want to show you just because I've heard some questions from parents before about this. In terms of the extensions and challenges that you can offer your students, a lot is already happening in your classrooms. But there's other things that you can do at home. So I want to show you just a couple ideas of what either you can do or what your teachers are already doing to push your students beyond some of the things that we just saw today. So at home, you can ask questions. If you're doing some math together, you can ask a lot of questions, and I have some examples for you here. And at school, I'm going to show you that like your teachers, they're already asking a lot of these questions that are pushing that thinking. And I know I was sitting with you guys and I was pushing your thinking when you were playing that game and making you go a little further. And there's also actual activities that your students are doing as well. So these are on your paper, so I'm not going to read them for you, but these are some questions that really support student thinking. It pushes them to think about number sense and also efficiency as well. So these are some of the things that you can do if you are doing some math with your child at home. And these are questions that I've heard come out of your teachers' mouths. They're really pushing your students to think deeply about things so that they can develop some number sense. And again with this one, this I took, it's also on your sheet because I know there's a lot of text up there. This I took word from the curriculum. So the curriculum, the Bridges curriculum that you guys are, or that your teachers are using in the classrooms, that's where this game came from. So these are extension activities that are right in the program already that your teachers often offer to your students. And they get really deep really quickly. Just as you notice when you're playing this game that looks like pretty simple on the surface, there's a lot of depth and challenge that can go into it. So this first extension activity that they offer is for students to develop their own rules and to change the rules. Like you wanted to change the dice, right? And they offer that to the students as a way to go deeper. So what if you use one of the dice, if it's numbered 4 through 9 instead of 1 through 6? How would that change things? What if you change the numbers on the pins? Right, as you ask the students, go for it, change the numbers on the pins, see what happens. What if you want to use negative numbers? That's an option, right? This is a 4th grade activity, but it's something you can offer to students for them to engage with and think about it if they're ready for it, if they're ready to take on that challenge. You guys are also talking about fractions. I heard fractions come up a couple times. What a great way to think about fractions too. This is also another piece that's, again, right there and accessible for your students. So it asks them to think about the connection between this game and probability and combinatorics, which is basically more probability, right? So they can go really deep into mathematical thinking, even though it's this pretty simple game on the surface, right? So I asked you some of these questions, right? Which of the rolls produces a strike with pins numbered 1 through 10? What's the probability of rolling a strike? What's the worst possible roll? Some of you think you got it, didn't you? The worst possible roll. Is there more than one worst possible roll? How do you know? I think I asked you, like, how many more options would there be with 1, 3, and 5 versus 4, 5, and 6? Like, how many more? Tell me. And you're like, well, I'd have to run the numbers. And so if you're a student, I'd be like, go for it. Have at it. Run those numbers. Tell me what you're learning about probability. So I'm offering that to you all just so you can see what's happening in some of your classrooms. And again, if you have some activities, there's always this way to push your students forward. And with that, we're bringing us back to where we were just a minute ago. So do we have time for whole group questions still?
Yeah, we can probably go to 10:05.
10:05. Yeah, so a couple more whole group questions here, if you have them. This is what's called wait time from a teacher move. Right, if somebody kind of has a question, but they're not sure, I'm just going to wait for a second. Go for it.
This is the purpose of teaching practices for transforming school through. So it would be sort of fun.
Yeah, Yeah, you can find it online. It's written for with teachers and administrators in mind, so not necessarily exactly for parents. But it's the reason why I bring that up is just because it's a phenomenal organization. They think about school change through mathematics, so how to make schools better in all respects through mathematics. And it's some of the principles that we use when we work with teachers and leaders.
That would be good because it's changing the way we teach math, maybe for parents to understand what's being taught.
Yep, that's true. Yeah, and I can also think about maybe if there's some books that might be more appropriate for parents, I can give those to Leslie and make sure they get to you. Yeah, absolutely. Any last questions? All right, then we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you guys so much for your time. It was great working with you.